Thank you for joining us today. The Our Driving Concern Employer Traffic Safety Program is pleased to be able to offer the webinar titled, Why You Should Maintain Your Company Vehicles. I want to welcome our presenter this morning, or this afternoon actually, Betsey Kulakowski, Training and Development Manager with the Oklahoma Safety Council. A few things to note before we get started. Everyone is muted, but you do have the ability to type questions during the webinar. All slides will be available. If you would like the slides, please request them in the notes section or post on the event survey. The presenter may answer your questions during the presentation or choose to address questions at the end. If you should encounter any problems or issues, please type a message to let us know. The presenter's contact information will be available on the last slide, and there is a very brief post-event survey at the conclusion of the webinar. Because this program is funded through grant dollars and provided at no cost to employers, we would greatly appreciate your feedback. With that, I welcome Betsey, and we'll turn it over to her to begin.
Thanks, Deanne. I'm Betsey Kulakowski. I'm Director of Training and Development with the Oklahoma Safety Council. And today we're going to talk a little bit about vehicle maintenance and why you should maintain your fleet vehicles. So there are some things you have to consider when you're looking at vehicle maintenance. You know, the general condition of your fleet vehicles, everything from wiper blades and fluids to tires, coolants, fueling, and even the housekeeping of your vehicles. Roadside emergency procedures and equipment, any supplies for weather like winter or summer weather, recalls of vehicles, and then just management of change. And we'll talk a little bit about each of these as we go through. First of all, the condition of your fleet. Your vehicles speak volumes of your company, and basically that's the image that people see. So what kind of a message do you want to send to the public? I worked with an employer who put his family name on every vehicle that went out, and he wanted to make sure because his name was on that vehicle that it looked good, because he wanted the public to have a positive impression of his company. So that may be the only thing that people know about your company is the vehicles that they see on the road. And you may not ever hear anything about it unless somebody is driving a vehicle that's unsafe or driving an unsafe message. So what kind of message do you want to send to the world? Do you want to be professional, or do you want to look like an amateur? Here we have an example of both. So just think about your vehicles and how they look and how they appear, because appearances and perceptions become people's realities. It also instills a good attitude among your drivers. You want to make sure that your vehicles are in good condition with no broken head or tail lights, no broken or cracked windshields or windows. You want to make sure your mirrors are in good condition, adequate reflectors and running lights, which is a great way to make sure that your vehicles are visible on the road. Trucks need to have proper, well-maintained mud flaps and skirting, and the tires always need to be in good condition. Of course, wiper blades and fluids make sure that the windshields can be seen through, and you want to make sure you have a professional driver behind the wheel. So first of all, who oversees your fleet? It can be different in every business. I've seen it from having a professional full-time fleet manager to having a part-time office secretary who maintains the fleet. And both can be done successfully in the right circumstances. Have they been trained? Do they know the maintenance needs of the vehicle? Who's going to do the maintenance? Do you have copies of your owner's manuals? Most people overlook that vital, important piece of information. That owner's manual can tell you so much. Your fleet managers need to make sure they're familiar with the owner's manuals, and so do your drivers. Do they have a manufactured preventative maintenance schedule? Most of your owner's manuals will have those included in them. Is there a system for your drivers to report any issues while they're out driving or when they're in the field? Do you have a procedure to red tag a vehicle that's unsafe? Are there any replacement parts that are rebuilt, or are you using factory original replacement parts? We had a vehicle at one of my former places of employment that every time I drove it, the low tire light came on, and I had no tire gauge to check the inflation on the tire. So every time I'd stop and I'd put some air in it until the light went off. Probably not the best practice at the time, but that was all I had to work with. When we finally did get it in for maintenance, it turned out that the gauge on the tire was malfunctioning, and we had overinflated that tire. It was actually at like 90 psi, and it was a hazard because we didn't have the right way to maintain it. So those are the kinds of things to think about. What kind of equipment do you have in your car for your employees when they do have to do any kind of maintenance checks? What are your oil change schedules? Your vehicles will last longer and perform better if you're maintaining your oil changes. Do you just wait for the light to come on, or do you actually have a schedule? How often do you change your wiper blades? How often do you refill the fuel or the fluids? And do the employees who are out driving, if they need to stop and get fluids or something for the vehicle, is there a way for them to purchase that? So do they have that authority? And then how often is tire pressure and tread wear checked? And that's something that's very important because, you know the expression, this is where the rubber meets the road. So the tires are your contact with the roadway, so they've got to be maintained in good condition with the right tire pressure. Oops, wrong way. So what about fueling? You think everybody knows how to fill up their gas tank properly, right? Well, have you added any CNG vehicles to your fleet? That's a whole different fueling procedure than you learn when you're 16 and learning to drive your mother's car. Even people at the gas station these days, you'll see them filling up and not following good safety rules. Things like not using your cell phone while you're fueling because your phone can spark any vapors. People who smoke at the gas station, I've seen people do that. Getting in and out of your car in the wintertime is a hazard because you can create static electricity that can also ignite fuel. So you want to make sure that you talk to your employees about those kinds of procedures, that they understand the safety risks and the proper way to do it. Consider that in your training. You know, you have to do hazard communication training every year. Most people don't think about the fuel we put in our vehicles as being a part of that hazard communication training, but it should be. Personal hygiene. Do people wash their hands after they fuel their vehicles before they get a snack or drink or smoke or put on makeup? That's very important to keep in mind because if you get anything on your hand, it can be transferred to your mouth, to your face. And what about emergency procedures? If there's any kind of a problem at the gas pump while you're fueling, what do they do? And those things you need to cover. And then let's talk a little bit about housekeeping. I worked in the OSHA consultation program for a number of years, and the consultation program did a research project looking at all 58 attributes of an effective safety and health management system, just to see which ones gave you the biggest bang for your buck. Of all those 58 attributes, the #1 attribute was housekeeping. A clean workplace is a safe workplace, and the same goes for your vehicle. So how clean are they inside and out? When the budget gets cut, how often are car washes being done? How often is vacuuming and cleaning up inside done? We know that can be one place where people might make cuts. And those are important to your safety program. You need to make sure that you have the ability to wash and maintain a clean vehicle. How are vehicle contents stored? I think probably one of my biggest pet peeves is seeing the hard hat in the back window. It's not good for the hard hat, and it's not good for the driver if there's a crash, because that hard hat becomes a flying object. How are the running lamps and reflectors maintained? That's another good way, like I said earlier, to make sure that people can see you. And you want to make sure that your vehicle is a safe vehicle. If you carry a load, you want to make sure that your load is secure. And in some cases, it may need to be tarped. I did some work down in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, and one of the biggest issues we had was the safety factor for the people who were tarping the vehicles. They would collect debris and then take it to the landfill, and it had to be tarped. And sometimes they raised the top of the truck so it was 10, 15 feet up, and they had workers on a 6-foot ladder trying to tarp the truck, and that is not a good way to do that because it exposes the workers to a fall hazard. So you want to make sure you have a way to tarp those vehicles safely. And then what do you do in the event of a roadside emergency? Well, you want to make sure you have procedures, and employees have to be trained to, pull off the side of the road, turn on their emergency signals, don some protective equipment, and then set out triangles, flashers, or flares. And then what do you carry in your vehicle? Of course, you want to have some high visibility clothing just in case there's a problem and they have to get out of the vehicle, because that's what will keep your employees from getting hit. They may need some gloves. They may need some safety glasses. If there's any kind of a problem with the battery and they're working on the battery, they want to have safety glasses on. The jacks and the tools for your vehicles, very important. I recently had a flat tire on my way to work, and I went to get my spare out of the back and to get my jack, and I couldn't get the jack out of the cradle. I tried everything in the world, and I just did not have the strength to get it out. It was jammed in there so tight. So when my roadside assistants arrived, that was the first thing I had to do was get out my jack, just because I couldn't get it out by myself. Do you carry a fire extinguisher? And if you do, that has to be carried properly because that is a compressed cylinder. Food and water in case you're stranded in bad weather. And a first aid kit. You should always have one of those in your vehicle. And do you have a roadside assistance program, and do the employees know how to use it? That can always be a barrier to having somebody come and help them if they don't know how to use their roadside assistance program. And then, of course, emergency kits. I mentioned a little bit earlier. Food and water are your basic essentials, but in the wintertime, you definitely want to have coats, gloves, hats, blankets, cell phone that's fully charged, or make sure you have a charger. You may also need some rain gear. If it's especially hot, you want to make sure you have ample supply of water to maintain hydration. Anything that can keep your employees safe in the sun, big hats, sunscreen, mosquito repellent. If you're doing work on the side of the road, you have to be cognizant of things like ticks and other insects, as well as snakes and things like that. How often do you check your vehicle for recalls? If you've ever been to the NHTSA website, that's a great place because you can go in and enter the VIN number of the vehicle. You can also do a Google search for recalled vehicles and enter the VIN number that way. You want to do those searches periodically because that's how you know that there's a problem, because most of the time if it's a major recall, you might hear about it on the media, but not every recall gets the same kind of attention. I know I had a vehicle that was involved in one of the big airbag recalls, and we were able to get that in and get it done, but it took some time because they ran out of replacement parts. So the sooner you can get your vehicle in, the sooner you can get that repaired and make sure that your employees are safe on the road. Management of change is when you make repairs, do you replace the parts with in-kind goods? You don't ever want to replace something with a part that doesn't fit or isn't appropriate for the vehicle. Tires are one of those most likely components to fail, but retreads aren't always reliable and may not be the best place to save a few bucks. I did a fatality investigation on a motor vehicle crash that involved a law enforcement officer who was involved in a high-speed chase. And the vehicle had a catastrophic failure of one of the tires, and it turns out it was a retread. And it was one of those cost-saving decisions that management made that had a direct impact on the vehicle's safety. And then your maintenance staff needs to be properly trained if you have one. Otherwise, you need to look at who is going to do your maintenance. And you want to make sure that you have a reputable repair shop that can make sure that your vehicle is maintained at factory specifications. It's kind of a really fast overview of some of the basic things you need to look at. If you're looking at what to put in your emergency supply kit, the National Safety Council has a really good list of emergency supplies to maintain in your car. Things like a properly inflated spare, a wheel wrench, and a tripod jack, jumper cables, toolkit or a multi-purpose utility tool, flashlight and extra batteries, reflective triangles and brightly colored cloth to make your vehicle more visible. Nowadays, we all have a GPS built into our phone, but in some cases, you may need something just as simple as a compass so that you can find your direction. First aid kits, I mentioned those earlier. Probably the biggest thing that most people don't put in their first aid kit that you may need in an emergency, especially in a motor vehicle crash, is gauze. If there's any kind of bleeding, it could be significant, and it usually takes a lot of gauze, so that's something to think about in your first aid kit. Non-perishable, high-energy foods such as nuts, fruit, hard candy. The thing you have to be careful with is with salty foods, they require more water. So you may not want something that's really all that salty, but things like chocolate or chocolate-covered energy bars, those are going to melt in the car in the heat, so that may not be the best option either. Again, drinking water, a reflective vest, a car charger for your cell phone, even something like duct tape. It binds the universe. It has a dark and a light side, so there's lots of benefits to duct tape. Good to have in your vehicle if you're involved in a crash and there's some damage to the bumper and you've got to get it home. You may need to use duct tape. That can be handy. You may want a rain poncho if you're out in bad weather like we were out in yesterday. Had there been any kind of a roadside emergency, a rain poncho would have been really helpful. Don't forget your winter weather equipment like your snow shovel, your ice scrapers and things like that. Make sure all your fleet vehicles have something like that in there. So that list is available on the National Safety Council website. Again, maintaining your vehicle is an important aspect of your safety and health management system. Your drivers and your fleet managers have a responsibility to make sure that employees have a safe and healthful workplace even when they're on the road. And they have to be trained. Everyone needs to know how to charge a battery, how to fuel the vehicle, how to maintain it. One of the things I saw a company do that I thought was really neat, they did a flat tire rodeo, and they brought their fleet vehicles out and had employees actually trained on how to change a tire, and then everybody had the opportunity to do it themselves. It gave them a chance to actually practice that skill in a controlled environment instead of on the side of the road, which is the last place to try to learn how to change a tire. And we all think, well, everybody should just know. But if you've never done it, it's not easy. So it's important to be trained. Motor vehicle crashes are the leading cause of worker fatalities, not only in Oklahoma, but in the United States. So you want to make sure your drivers are trained. The Our Driving Concern program is exactly what that's for. And we do have a Train the Trainer course coming up both in Oklahoma City and Tulsa this month. Be prepared for any kind of emergency that may occur. We'll do another webinar on that topic. And always make sure your vehicle is maintained with in-kind replacement parts. I talked about the Our Driving Concern program. Defensive driving is another thing that may be included in your driver's training program. Whether you use National Safety Council or another driving program, you want to make sure that they're trained to be a defensive driver. We do it here in the Oklahoma Safety Council as a classroom course, or it can also be done online. For more information, you can visit our website at oksafety.org, and you can reach me at betsyk@oksafety.org as well. Any questions?
Okay, I think that it doesn't look like that we have any at this time. So thank you so much, Betsy, for such a wonderful and educating webinar. And thank you to all who attended. We know your time is valuable, and we hope you gained useful information and resources that will assist you going forward. If you would take a quick moment and fill out the post-survey webinar, and please check our website for future webinars. This webinar will be available on our website in about a week. And we always try to bring you helpful information in a quick and easy format, just like today, that you can take back to your organization and start using immediately. And with that, we thank you again, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. And that's the end of our presentation.